Hello guys, welcome to our live cooking session. With me is Dominika Targosz, our Poland's Chefs for Change ambassador. Dominika used to be a chef. Now she's doing a lot of consulting for businesses and restaurants and producers as well. She's been cooking plant-based for 10 years now. Hi Dominika.
Hi, it's really nice to be with you.
What you're making today?
Today I will make a simple spread inspired by a tofu, by a Polish dish which is a cottage cheese. A more liquid one with like small textural elements with a unique taste that is often missed by people who go plant-based. And from this spread, I will make a more filling dish inspired by a very renowned Polish dish, ziemniaki z zikiem, which is potato with this cottage cheese spread. And I will serve it on a piece of bread and show you how to make a nice quick lunch inspired by some comfort food flavors of Poland.
Great.
As a Chef for Change ambassador, I will talk a bit about a publication that will have a premiere soon, which we wrote as Chefs for Change Poland. And it's a starter kit for professional cooks, but it can be used by anyone who's into cooking. And it has, instead of recipes, it has many tips how to amplify everyday cooking with some simple tips how to choose and pick flavors and techniques to make dishes stand out more. And I will show you one of these techniques in today's quick workshop. I will encourage you to search for flavors that you miss in unexpected ingredients and how to find it in crazy ways. And the idea of this cottage cheese that I will prepare today came to me like a total accident, and made it during a yoga workshop that I was cooking at. I was preparing the spread for the breakfast, and I had some leftover spring onions with the white ends that usually gets either thrown away or wasted or added to a soup. I decided to add these ends to the spread. And it turns out that it was the perfect source of this creamy, milky flavor that is usually missing in the plant-based dairy. That comes from a nutritionalist, but they are pretty specific in flavor. And the spring onions are known to be much more interesting addition to this thing. So let's start cooking. I just take a regular block of tofu and cut a smaller chunk of it, and I will show you how to use it later. But first, I just cut this bigger block into smaller pieces, and I will prepare everything in the standing blender.
I can just say that the things that we have here are like super basic stuff.
Yeah, it's really easy to cook with basic stuff, and you don't have to use some specific ingredients from eco shops or organic markets. Now a bit about the onions, because I showed you the ones that are cut from the scallions. But if you don't have this one, you can use like just a regular onion, but take much smaller piece of it because it will be much too sharp. You can add like a quarter and then add more according to your preferences. The red onion will be better in spreads that are inspired by some seafood flavors and remind of a spread that tastes like fish. And for this one, it will be much too sharp. So I will add this, cut in smaller pieces, just the white part because of the color, and put everything into the blender. A bit of this nutritional yeast, but much smaller amount than in usual recipes. Just add a half teaspoon. I think the recipe will be available to you at the site, but as you see, I'm not using the specific amounts that I've listed. I'm just more doing it and eyeballing the ingredients because I'll be tasting it on the way, which is my usual way of cooking. It's pretty annoying for most people because they want specific amounts. But for me, it's much more convenient to just follow the basics at the beginning and then add more. So start with smaller amounts and just adjust according to your preferences. Now a bit about the acidic flavor that is source that is present in the dairy products usually. And in the recipes that you can find online, there's usually one source of acidic flavor, either lemon or vinegar or apple cider vinegar. But in this one, I'm using two kinds of acidic ingredients. I will use apple cider vinegar.
And why are you doing this?
Because diversifying the sources of acidity gives much more pleasant taste and much more diverse and not so straightforward. That the spread or cream cheese doesn't taste just like lemon, and it's not so obvious that it's like a lemony spread.
Is it always a good idea to do that, to mix different kind of
It's
sources?
probably the matter of the dish, because when I'm preparing, for example, a vegan mayo, I usually just use either soy milk or aquafaba, the water from the chickpea can. And when I'm making mayo, I will use vinegar because it's the usual way for mayo and it tastes just like the classic one. But making the same recipe with the same proportions, but adding the lemon juice, makes it taste more like sour cream.
Yeah.
So it's interesting just to find the familiar tastes and in different ingredients. At the beginning, I will just add lemon of half of the juice of half of the lemon, and then try and maybe add more at the end. A bit of white pepper, which is much milder than the black one, and has also some funky flavor to it, so it's really interesting. And at the beginning, a splash of milk just to make the blender run more smoothly. And I will blend the base. I just want to achieve the smooth consistency at the beginning. And when it's still a bit crumbly, not super smooth, just like this, I will start adding the oil, just a regular canola neutral in flavor oil. And it's a trick that I picked up while making mayonnaise, that you just slowly drizzle while blending. And in that way, it's much smoother and the whole thing emulsifies.
So when you're done blending, can you tell us about the guidebook and what kinds of tips can you find there? Is it focused on a specific region, or are these tips more general?
The tips are much more general and universal, because it's better not to focus on a regional cuisine or the most popular one, because as we grow up, we get used to some cooking rules that most of them are pretty general. Of course, there are some specific ones and ways of cooking that are more popular in some regions. But when turning to the plant-based diet, there are usually some tips and tricks that are more popular than others. So in the guidebook, there is a lot of tricks that are divided into chapters about techniques. about the ingredients that can bring up, for example, the umami flavor.
Yeah.
And how you can find it in unexpected ingredients. Like onion here is also a source of a lot of umami. But for example, the tomato, especially in the concentrated form, they have much more umami flavor than beef, for example. So it's usually a surprising fact for many people. Another thing that you can find in the guidebook is the table of ingredients that are best together and how to combine them to enhance the flavors and how to, for example, make the texture more interesting. Okay, so I added a bit more oil and I'm blending to smooth consistency. And in the recipe, I wrote the amount of oil, I think about 100 milliliters. And I think it's a lot for most of people. It's about 5 to 6 tablespoons. But I noticed that in plant-based cuisine, the recipes usually use much, much less oil, which I think is for many people who try these dishes, the cause of the lack of flavor and the mouthfeel, because oil and fat is causing much more longer lingering flavor.
It's carrying the flavor.
It's carrying the flavor. It's making it it's more enhanced, and it doesn't disappear so quickly in the mouth. So the texture now is, like you see, quite smooth, but it's not like a liquid form. And that's like my preferred texture of the spread. But you can add more milk or more oil according to your preferences. And I just sample a bit and...
Can I sample a bit?
Of course.
Thanks.
And you can tell me what should I add to it. A bit more lemon juice or a bit of...
This is already very good.
I think a bit of salt would do.
It does taste, yeah, and maybe a little bit of... I don't know how it's supposed to taste.
It should taste like your idea of cream cheese or cottage cheese.
I think salt and maybe a little bit of acid.
Here is a quite interesting thing.
Yeah.
You should add a bit of acid at the beginning and then salt, because acid makes things more salty.
Okay.
So when you add salt first, and then the lemon or lemon juice or vinegar next, it can be a bit too salty at the end.
I did not know that.
I picked it up from my grandmother, who said it to me, of course, when I made the mistake and the thing was much too salty than it should be. And I think that's the great source of knowledge, because now, as I'm discovering many things during reading cookbooks or food blogs, I call my grandmother and tell her some ideas, and she tells me, like, yeah, I told you that, or I told you should boil the water first and then add the potato and not do it like from the cold water, etc. Or I show her some cool vegan ingredients, like, I don't know, kale, for example, which is like, okay, here it grows in my garden, and I always use it in your vegetable stock or something like this.
I thought you would say that, like, my rabbits eat it.
Yeah, she told it as well. But I think it's a cool thing about comfort food and this search for familiar flavors. It's not only for chefs who want to impress their customers, it's for everyone who wants to sit with their family and just try these things that were disappearing from the table because they want plant-based or fully vegan, and they just could eat a piece of bread with tomato or sandwich, and suddenly now they can enjoy the same stuff that they used to eat. For example, I don't know, this cool thing with vegan or plant-based meat that causes your grandmother and mother to cook you these familiar dishes that you grew up with, but in your way.
Yeah, well, actually, what my mom does, she's always complaining, I don't know what to give for you to eat, and the great thing is that she's looking for the flavors that she knows, and she uses the techniques that she knows, and Yeah, and it's always really, really good, and it's always like really close to what I remember from childhood because she's like, that's her target, and she does whatever she can with the means that she have to reach it, and that's really cool. So she isn't hung up on like, let's buy vegan products, but she uses what she has and what she used to always do, and she makes it vegan.
Yeah, and I think this is a great way because when we eat for plant-based for more than 10 years, we usually search for recipes on some food blogs or make some cool things that are now fashionable in trend or trending on Instagram. And our parents are just trying to bring us something good to eat and doing their best. And it actually usually turns out better than these fancy things. Because that's the thing. We grow up in some food culture that is close to us, and these are the flavors that are most familiar to us. And this is also the reason why we search, for example, the taste of meat, which usually causes some rages in the comment section when their new product comes out, or there's a discussion about vegan sausage and why we look for the taste of meat. And it's so simple because we grow up with these flavors and we feel comfortable with them. So when we can have them in the non-cruel form, so it's super extra.
Yeah, and it's actually a tip I think I got from you when you try to cook something, like look for a recipe for the like traditional version and make it vegan. Not necessarily look for the vegan recipe for this thing.
It's a great way, and that was the way that actually I learned to cook because I was craving some flavors. And 10 years ago, there wasn't so much in the vegan section of the shop that is now. So I had to recreate everything that I wanted. And I was asking myself, what is the source of, I don't know, fluffiness, creaminess, and how can I achieve it? And not without using dairy, meat, eggs, etc. And now I think I like to show people that it's really possible. But coming back to the
I just
cooking.
let you know we're halfway through.
Okay. I will show you how to prepare a simple lunch. Wait, I haven't finished with the spread with the cream cheese.
Because sorry for like talking to you too much.
No, it's a pleasure. Because when you just want a simple cream cheese, I think that you can be perfectly happy with this one. But in Poland, I know that in Germany that is also a popular thing. We have a thing called cottage cheese, and it's a more liquid cheese, usually in a small cup. And they have like these small granules and pieces of a creamy cheese, and it's really hard to achieve it in a plant-based way or impossible to buy. And I decided to make it myself, just like blending this piece of tofu, not whole cube, making a creamy base. You can make it from tofu, but you can also use, I don't know, cashew or your preferred base from the cream cheese. Silken tofu will be perfect as well. It's just the thing to flavor it properly with, like I showed you, vinegar, lemon, etc. And then the piece of tofu that I left over at the beginning, I just crumble it by hand into super small pieces. There's also a very cool trick that I picked up from Asian cuisine, Taiwanese one probably. You can freeze a block of tofu, and then it crumbles much more easily because the water pockets inside make, while the freezing, they make these big pockets of air, and it's much more interesting in texture. But just a regular tofu without freezing and other crazy combinations and stuff that crazy people who love to cook do. I just crumble it to smaller pieces and like this crumbly texture. And I add it's probably half amount that I prepared at the beginning. I mix it.
You're not marinating it. Would it be a good idea to marinate the tofu first? Or that's not
Marinating tofu
necessary?
is an interesting thing because at the beginning everyone says that you should flavor the tofu properly, and it's a sure thing. But marinating tofu in an oil-based marinade is pointless because the tofu cannot soak up the oil so well. And it's a better idea to marinate it in a water-based thing that is heavily salted because it's a tofu, which is a cube of protein, soaks up the water-based and salt much better, and it changes the texture a little bit and gets more, I don't know, tangy in taste as well. But the water-based marinades are great, or with a bit of salt just. Or a great tip is marinating it in a pickle juice from these dill pickles.
Yeah.
If you are familiar with this thing, like sour gherkins are great, and the leftover water, which is acidic and has a lot of bacteria in it, makes it super flavorful. Similar to feta cheese.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing to do. You can even use the sour cabbage juice. I saw the like recipes like this, so it's an interesting thing. So that's a texture that resembles this cottage cheese a little bit. I think now is the time to sample it and tell me how
Awesome.
how well it's.
That's what I'm here for. Oh, there's a lot.
Is it close to your memory of a
Yeah, it is. It's really good.
I think adding the onion was a game changer for me with this recipe because I usually made it this way, I like crumbling tofu, making the creamy base, but it's really the onion with was amazing. And
You mean this like white part?
yeah, white part, or when I don't have it at home, I just use like regular onion, but in a smaller amount, or a piece of shallots that's great as well because it's milder in taste. And I think looking for these flavors in unexpected products is a great way. I think I'm the most impressed recently with this company called Notco that started making products using algorithms. And they are analyzing the flavor combinations. I think they are from Chile. They are analyzing flavor combinations to get as close as possible to the flavor of these classic products. And now they have premiered with their product called Not Milk. And it's not made from soy or on an oat base or coconut, etc. It has cabbage on the ingredient list and pineapple, etc., because they found out that some components of cabbage blended together with pineapple create a product that tastes like milk, which is mind-blowing and amazing as well, because you don't have to call something oat milk, you just can drink a glass of something that tastes just like milk, but has cabbage in it. So I think that's an extreme example of searching for flavors in unexpected sources. I don't know if it's outputting for some, it may be. But
it's not for me. I like cabbage, I like pineapple.
Yeah, but
I don't know if I would
probably when
like
some people would read the ingredient list, they wouldn't add it to their daily oatmeal, for example. But I think it's all a matter of taste and deciding to try. Yesterday I've been making a small catering for people who hasn't tasted or tried any plant-based product at all, and we had some small samples of dry cured sausage for them. And usually the men were, of course, the most hesitant to try because no, I feel sick after eating vegetables, I need meat, etc. And I was just trying to convince them in a nice way that it's super spicy, very good, and you'll be surprised, or challenge them in front of their friends. And they were super surprised that it's so similar. So it's not at all the matter of the base ingredients. Usually it's a matter of spices that you add.
So the outcome is what matters.
Yeah. and when it reminds the product that is the source of the inspiration, so that it usually doesn't matter. But now let's prepare.
Yeah, we have like 23 minutes left.
Great. I think we'll have some time to eat it for lunch. Okay, so I will take and toast pieces of bread. I like to use sourdough one. But if in this dish, I think some dark rye bread would be great. And I think that's usually done in this way.
So you're using like a dry pan, and you're aiming for crispiness, or just to make it warm?
I'm aiming for crispiness. I prefer to make it in a pan instead of an oven or toaster, because it gives a nice crispiness on the outside and it's light on the inside. I sometimes add a bit of more olive oil to the pan, but it can burn more easily. So if you want a perfect crispy toast, it's good to do it in a dry pan.
Yeah, it's probably healthier
and
as
go,
well.
Yeah, and go low and slow. instead of burning it quickly on the outside. I think it's also scary for many people that plant-based dishes require so much time, and the result is not so certain at the beginning, especially when they start experimenting with this. And I'm not sure if I have any advice for beginners. I think, but I think there's so many products in convenience shops right now, and you can start slowly using these products, which are not so expensive anymore, and search for your favorite ones.
Okay, so what, like, talking about tips and advice, the guidebook, who is it for? Like you said, is it for chefs? Is it for...
Yeah, the English title states that it's for professionals, but I don't want anyone to feel that as a non-professional it's not for them, because I wrote it with just a casual user in mind. Trying to put some tips that will be very useful in everyday cooking. The most simple ones, like techniques to achieve and get out the most from vegetables. I am I stand out for using super simple ingredients. I really hate the idea of finding the most expensive, fancy, and unusual ingredients. Of course, as a chef, I love them, and I use a lot of them myself. But
it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. You can use like local seasonal ingredients. You have a block of tofu, a piece of onion and dill, and potato, and that's a super simple filling dish.
Okay, and where is the guidebook available for everyone?
You mean to download or buy? Yeah, it will be available on Chefs for Change International website very soon, so you can check the social media and the website and search for it. I think it will be available in about a week, because it's ready and it's just waiting to be uploaded on the website. And it's very useful in the restaurants as well, and for chefs. I think the most useful for chefs who I've been talking to are the ideas how to prepare dishes from certain ingredients. There are, at the end, there are 5 common ingredients and ideas how to combine them with with other ingredients, but spices as well, and where to search for the inspiration, how to prepare them, because for professional chefs that's usually a big question mark. What do these people need? What do they expect? What do they want? And they are a bit lost while adding new items to the menu, and they think every person who is plant-based wants to eat a vegan burger or a salad or I don't know, a pizza without cheese. But that's true. That's not true. It's like the same thing that you have in your regular menu, but you can just take out some pieces, and in this guidebook you will find advice how to replace them, or I will also show that you don't have to replace them. You can just create the dishes from other ingredients, just how to look for certain parts, for example, how to achieve creaminess with white bean or roasted cauliflower, and how to add more sweetness to the dish with also cauliflower and white bean. But it's not like you can make everything from beans, which is this common saying in on plant-based forums. Okay, the bread needs like 1 more minute. And what's more, we also have some tips from other ambassadors of the Chefs for Change project that are located all around the globe, so it's interesting to see which things are regional and which are universal. And for most of them, for most of the tips, it usually comes down to the fact that you can search for flavors everywhere, and playing with the ingredients at first can be a bit scary, but when you start using these things that you didn't at the beginning and start playing with, for example, I don't know, sunflower seeds, which are usually used as a like crumbly topping for salads and nothing more, but you can use it as a base for a spread or yogurts, or make even parme, like a crumble on top with some nutritional yeast, which are great in flavor and are usually used as a source of cheesy flavor. But for me, they are a great source of umami. And you can use them in vegetable stock, for example, not only in this cream cheese spreads. So it's, I don't know, it's pretty, it may be scary to come out of the comfort zone, so-called. And people usually are a bit afraid of losing some flavors. And the study usually showed that that's the thing that stops people from going completely plant-based. This thing about losing and compromising on some favorite flavors and not being able to, I don't know, after a tough day at work, just coming home and preparing a super quick meal that will give a feeling of comfort and just will be super filling. But it's not true. It's, I think, just a matter of learning some things and learning how to use the products that are available on market now.
Yeah, we have 15 minutes left.
Great.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, like, do your thing.
Make it quick. I'm just hungry. I'm so hungry.
I am hungry, but like no rush. About the guidebook, I also wanted to say that it's like for me, like I don't know a lot, like I don't know a percentage of what Dominika knows about cooking, and for me it was really like surprising. A lot of the stuff that's in there, it was like a huge surprise, but it also was like, come on, that's really simple. Like, I can do this. So I do recommend that you look up the website like in a week or so, or our social media, the Chefs for Change International social media, and download the guidebook because it's really, really cool. Like it's a huge, like the knowledge is probably scattered all over internet, but you have to like look for it, and it's like a very condensed compilation of very useful but simple solutions.
Yeah, and I'm super glad to hear it because it was my idea to take a step back from the usual way of showing the recipes in a neat form with the ingredient list, the amounts, and then the process. Of course, it's super useful for beginners and for everyone actually, but with your everyday cooking, it's a bit boring to use recipes every day, and also who has time to just take a cookbook and search for a certain recipe day after day. Just want to come home, take some ingredients from the fridge and prepare something nice. So I think in the guidebook there are a lot of tips how to actually learn to cook your things, and you can just pick your favorite trick and make it your thing. And
Yes.
Okay. I'm doing.
You're doing.
I'm doing the from the cream cheese from the spread that I prepared, and with the grilled bread. I will serve it together with roasted potato to make it more filling and to add a lot of more carbs to make it satisfying as well. I'm spreading a heaping tablespoon of cottage cheese.
Did you roast these potatoes in any specific, like a special way, or are these like?
No, I was in a hurry today, and I just threw them in the oven and on 200 degree. Added a bit of oil and wait.
Okay.
And actually, they're still warm. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
But the cool trick is, for example, for crispy fries, is to cut the potato in matchsticks before roasting in the oven, and then cooking it for a minute or two in a water that has vinegar in it, because the vinegar causes the starch on the outside of the potato to close, let's say, and makes the outside more crispy.
Yeah, it's cooking, but it sounds like science.
Yeah, because there is a lot of science in cooking. I think more in baking and in pastry, because you have to be super specific with the amounts and have a scale, etc. With the just casual cooking, there is science behind, and it's useful when you are a geek and want to really search for certain flavors and learn how to use this knowledge to your liking. But I was listening to some podcasts recently about food science, and most of the stuff that's happening in the oven, on the pan, etc., is like our idea and some pre-assumptions that we can't really research super specifically at the moment. So it's no need to be afraid that you will ruin the stuff because you don't know these rules. Just child's play sometimes cooking. And I'm talking with a lot of people who are afraid of ruining the dish or making something that they will throw away. And someone asked me recently if I prepared anything that was only good to throw away to the trash. But the more you cook and the more you learn, probably you learn the tricks how to fix the dishes. And if you don't heavily oversalt or add too much spices, it's still possible to fix. And if you heavily oversalt the dish, you can add more of some ingredients, make it double, or come out of the disaster in an elegant way. Still, there are some tricks, and that's the reason it's good to learn the basics of cooking, because you waste less and you feel more satisfaction that you can prepare things yourself and they can be super tasty, even if they were not at the beginning, but you can fix it to your liking. And you can fix the recipes that you find online or in some cookbooks, because they are great, most of them, but they don't have to be your thing.
Yeah.
You can change them and play with them, etc. Okay. So the toast is ready. The potatoes, I didn't heat them in any way because it's a dish that you can prepare, I don't know, in an office environment and just take the ingredients with you and not have any pan that you can heat it in. I put some scallion greens on top and a lot of dill. Dill is a really popular herb to use in Poland and Polish dishes. It usually reminds me of these traditional spreads that I used to eat it with. It grew in my grandma's garden. I convinced many people who hated dill to eat it. I scatter it on top. I add a bit of white pepper. And to contrast the dish a bit more, I will add lemon zest on top, which adds nice zinc to it. And it's ready. Here's the dish. But the spread is a very universal thing. You can use it as a dip for roasted vegetable with a bag of potato chips in the evening movie session instead of, I don't know, guacamole or anything like this. It's for breakfast, lunch, and etc.
Yes. No,
Okay,
I'm joking.
okay. Now it's time.
No, I don't think it's gonna end well.
It's gonna be a big mess.
Yes, it is. But yeah, I have to. I have to just
Yeah,
tell you how
I think
it
it's
tastes.
your obligation.
But
as
like,
a
don't
host.
make a close up. Okay, it's gonna fall. That's for sure. I'll take a bite.
I should bring a fork for you, but the dish is not usually served on the piece of toast. There's usually a big roasted potato in the classic way with this cream cheese, cottage cheese on top. But everyone always said that I'm putting everything on a piece of bread. And it's still like that. I'm a sucker for bread and love everything in gluten form. So.
Yeah. You can see that from your Instagram profile.
yeah, for sure. Because it's also a thing with reduction diets. When you get rid of some element like dairy, eggs, meat, many people, especially restaurant owners and chefs, try to combine every reduction diet in one. And they're making stuff that's gluten-free, vegan, sugar-free, etc., especially with desserts. And the result is not the best because it's too much coming out of these comfort zones and of this set of skills that chefs have. And they want to serve everyone a dish that's for them, just with the one item from the menu. And it's not the best way because people on plant-based diets usually don't avoid dairy, sugar, etc. And it's much more convenient to prepare dishes that are made according to some one rule.
Yeah, but it's also cool. Like, for example, you might think that bread is kind of boring. How long can you keep eating sandwiches like bread, cheese, vegan cheese, and tomato? And now you're making like you're redefining bread.
Yeah, but putting potato on bread
as a carrier of awesome stuff.
Yeah, and putting potato on bread is probably not the most popular thing, but actually
you sprinkle it with rice.
Yeah, in India there is this toast with masala potato that is a super popular street snack. So it's also a great idea to search for inspirations in other cuisines and food cultures, but not copying the recipes one-to-one, but making them with more familiar ingredients.
Yeah.
Just picking some cool technique or a way to prepare the dish. For example, boiling instead of roasting or roasting, etc. Or adding some spice that's specific to the region. For example, I love gochugaru flakes that are specific to Korean cuisine and usually used to make this fermented cabbage kimchi. And most people use them only for kimchi. But I love to sprinkle it on everything because the taste
On bread.
On bread and on sandwiches and on roasted toast and everything. But the taste of gochujang is much milder than chili flakes. They are a bit sweet, and for people who hate spicy stuff, they are usually pretty surprising because it gives a bit of spicy flavor, but not so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so you can use familiar ingredients, but that's so popular to your culture. But add some cool things from other food cultures and play with them according to your liking. And
We said a lot, but there's still one question from the audience, and is Kromka nearby?
Kromka, actually, which is my dog, and the name is a slice of bread, of course, is alone at home.
Oh.
She's scared of staying alone at home.
So you should take some...
A slice of bread for her.
Yeah.
I will for sure.
Kromka
I left some potato in the kitchen. I hope she's not going to break in to steal the potato, because she's able to do it. But she has the greatest care of my sister, who came especially to pet sit her, and now she will be half hour alone, but she's fine. She's doing well.
We hope that answers your question. Okay, so we are actually running out of time. Is there anything else that you would like to add to what we already said?
I don't know if I have some closing sentence. I just hope I will make you experiment more in the kitchen. I'm not asking you to be super brave and come out of your comfort zones, but maybe use some cool ingredients to come back to your comfort zone with cooking. Or find it. Or get a super surprising memory of your favorite dish from an ingredient you didn't expect to. So be playful and in the kitchen and in life.
Yes, that's our final message for you. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed the session. We hope that you will prepare this stuff. And we also recommend the guidebook, which will help you be more playful in the kitchen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.